Hey, TaxBots. I'm Justin Spicer from the Ohio State Legal Services Association, and I'm here with Michael Edwards, staff attorney with the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, and Luke Minak, senior attorney with the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. Today, we're going to discuss how to know if you're considered self-employed and how that affects your taxes. Feel free to leave a comment below, and we'll answer whatever questions we can. We've spent the last few months talking about what a taxpayer should consider when they're self-employed. For this session, we're going to switch topics a little bit and talk about how to know whether you're self-employed or whether you're a traditional employee. So, Michael, what does it mean to be an employee?
So that's a really important question because sometimes an employer may tell you you're what's called an independent contractor, which is another term for self-employed, when you're actually an employee. An employee is generally considered anyone who performs services if the business can control what work will be done and how. What matters is that the business has the right to control the details of how the worker does their job. Usually, an employee does not normally have control over the financial and business parts of the business. Instead, the business will provide the worker with the tools or equipment needed to perform the service or reimburse the worker if they have to get their own tools or supplies, whether that's a computer, a backhoe, or any other kind of supplies needed to do the job. Finally, an employee likely has employee-type benefits, such as a pension plan, insurance, vacation time, or sick pay.
So, Luke, how does a worker know if a business has the right to control what and how services will be performed?
The one thing to consider is whether the employer has instructions for the employee. So if someone gets detailed instructions on how, when, or where to work, what tools or equipment to use, what assistants to hire to help with the work, or whether to buy supplies or services, that means they're likely an employee. Another factor to consider is whether training is provided. So does the business provide training on how to perform the job? If so, that probably means that the business wants the work to be done in a certain way, which usually means that you're an employee.
So, Michael, another consideration you mentioned was financial control. How does that factor into whether you're an employee or an independent contractor, which, as you mentioned earlier, is another term for self-employed?
Right. Financial control means whether or not the business has the right to control the financial aspects of the worker's job. For instance, how is the worker paid? If the worker generally gets a regular amount of money per hour, they are likely an employee. And an independent contractor, on the other hand, is usually paid a flat fee for the job. Another part of financial control is whether the worker has a significant investment or stands to profit or lose money based on how well the business does. If a worker has a significant investment in the equipment or business, this is usually a sign that they are an independent contractor. Finally, if a worker is reimbursed for expenses or paid back for the things they buy to do the job, they are probably an employee. Normally, independent contractors have expenses like buying equipment or hiring other workers and aren't paid back for those expenses.
The last factor Michael mentioned was employee type benefits. What does that mean, Luke?
So if you're receiving, or you could receive insurance, a pension plan, vacation pay, or sick pay, that's usually a sign of an employer-employee relationship. Independent contractors normally must pay for benefits like these out of their own pocket.
So, Michael, what happens if you're told that you're an independent contractor by a business, but you think you're actually an employee?
So if you think you've been misclassified as an independent contractor instead of an employee, or vice versa, you can file a Form SS-8 with the IRS, and the IRS will investigate to determine your worker status. You can find this form at irs.gov/SS8. Then the IRS will tell the company you work for that you submitted this form and can respond to anything you file with the IRS. Employers may try to classify an employee as an independent contractor so the employer does not have to pay employment taxes. After the IRS investigates, they will send you a notice letting you know whether you're an employee or an independent contractor.
So, Luke, are employees taxed differently than self-employed workers or independent contractors?
Kind of. So the taxes are generally the same. The difference is who is responsible for paying them. So as an employee, your employer withholds or subtracts the tax you owe when you're paid. This includes the federal income tax based on how much you earn, as well as your FICA tax, which is the Social Security and Medicare tax. As an employee, 6.2% of your total wages goes to Social Security tax, and 1.45% of your total wages goes to Medicare tax. Your employer matches your FICA contribution and also pays into the federal unemployment tax, or FUTA. But if you're self-employed, you pay 100% of the FICA tax, or 12.4% to Social Security and 2.9% to Medicare, along with the other taxes you may owe.
So Michael, earlier you talked about workers being misclassified as an employee when they're really self-employed or vice versa. What would that mean for that misclassified worker?
So like Luke just mentioned, if you're an employee, your employer matches the worker's contribution to the FICA tax. But if you've been misclassified as an independent contractor, the employer's share of taxes will not be paid and the employee's share of taxes will not be withheld. So if you've asked the IRS to be reclassified and the determination is made in your favor, you'll likely need to file an amended tax return to recalculate your tax liability.
Right. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Luke, for that great information today. And thanks to everyone for watching. Join us next time on June 16th when we talk about education credits and how to apply for federal student aid. And remember, this segment and all the others in our Tax Chat series are available on our Facebook page. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.